My girlfriend betrayed me with my biggest rival, not knowing I owned his entire company. The night my girlfriend told me she was leaving me for another man, she had no idea that the man she had chosen was sitting across from the table from me, because I secretly owned his company, and she had even less idea that I already knew about their affair. What she didn't know was that I had spent the previous 72 hours uncovering a plan that was much bigger than cheating. And when I finally exposed the truth, I discovered that my girlfriend hadn't fallen in love with another man at all. She had been helping him destroy me because she believed I was hiding millions of dollars from her, and the person who had convinced her to betray me was someone I had trusted for almost 10 years. My name is Ethan, and for 3 years I had been dating Claire. She believed I worked as a financial analyst for a private investment firm, lived comfortably but modestly, and spent most of my money carefully because I didn't earn as much as she thought I should. That was the story I had given her, but the truth was completely different. I had founded an investment company when I was 26, and after several acquisitions, it had grown into a private holding company worth several $billion. I kept my identity out of the public spotlight because my father had been kidnapped when I was young after his wealth became known, and since then I had avoided publicity whenever possible. Even Claire didn't know the real extent of my wealth. She knew I had money, but she believed I was simply a successful investor with a comfortable amount of savings. I never told her about the private jets, the international properties, or the fact that I controlled several companies through holding companies she had never heard of, because I wanted to know whether she loved me or the lifestyle she thought I could eventually provide. For 3 years, she gave me every reason to believe I had made the right decision, until one evening she accidentally left her tablet open on our kitchen counter while she went upstairs. A message appeared from someone named Adrian, and the message said, "He still doesn't suspect anything. Once he signs the papers, we can finally finish this." I stared at the screen because I had never heard the name Adrian before, and then another message appeared. "Don't worry. He thinks I'm leaving him because I found someone better." I felt my stomach drop because Claire had been telling me for weeks that she was unhappy, but I had assumed we were having ordinary relationship problems. Now I was looking at evidence that she had been planning something behind my back. I didn't touch the tablet. Instead, I took a photograph of the messages with my phone and waited for her to come downstairs. When she returned, she acted completely normal, kissed me on the cheek, and asked whether I wanted dinner. I said yes, and for the rest of the night I pretended nothing had happened while my mind raced through every possibility. The next morning, I quietly asked my security team to identify Adrian, and within 2 hours I knew exactly who he was. Adrian Cole was the chief executive of a technology company called Vantage Systems, one of the fastest-growing companies in the country, and more importantly, one of the companies I secretly controlled through a chain of investment firms. Adrian didn't know I was his majority shareholder because the ownership structure had been deliberately kept private. That discovery should have been enough to make me confront Claire, but then my security team found something much worse. Adrian had been meeting Claire for almost 6 months, and their relationship wasn't simply romantic. They had been discussing my finances, my company, and a set of documents they wanted me to sign. I immediately asked my lawyer what documents they could possibly be referring to, and he discovered that someone had recently requested copies of my personal investment agreements. The request had been made using Claire's identification. That was when I realized this wasn't an affair. It was a setup. I decided to play along. 2 nights later, Claire came home and told me she had met someone else. She expected me to become angry, but instead I calmly asked whether she was sure. She said she had never been happier and that Adrian understood her in ways I never had. I asked her whether she loved him, and she said yes without hesitation. What she didn't know was that Adrian was sitting in a private restaurant that evening, waiting for her to call him and confirm that I had accepted the breakup. Instead of confronting her, I told her I understood. She looked surprised. Then she asked me whether I wanted her to move out immediately. I told her she could take her time. The look on her face told me she hadn't expected that response. After she went upstairs, I called my lawyer and told him to prepare a completely different set of documents. If Claire wanted me to sign something, I wanted to know exactly what it was before she ever put it in front of me. 3 days later, she brought the documents home. She told me they were related to our apartment and some investments we had discussed months earlier. I pretended to read them, but I recognized the language immediately. They weren't ordinary investment papers. they would have given another person temporary authority over several of my financial accounts. I asked Claire why she wanted me to sign them. She became nervous and said it was just paperwork. I smiled and told her I trusted her. That was the moment she made the biggest mistake of her life. She took the documents back upstairs, photographed my signature from an old contract, and sent the picture to Adrian. They weren't waiting for a new signature. They were planning to forge one. My lawyer confirmed it the following morning. Then he found something that made the entire situation even more disturbing. The person who had provided Adrian with information about my hidden companies was not Claire. It was my own chief financial officer. The man had worked with me for 9 years, knew every major investment I had made, and had access to information that even Claire couldn't possibly have known. I realized then that I wasn't dealing with one betrayal. I was dealing with 3. Claire wanted money, Adrian wanted control of my company, and my financial officer wanted both of them to succeed because he had secretly been stealing from one of my investment funds for years. I could have exposed all of them immediately, but I decided to find out exactly what they were planning. My security team tracked Adrian's meetings, and eventually we discovered that he intended to use the forged documents to transfer control of several assets into a private company registered overseas. If the plan succeeded, I could have lost hundreds of millions before anyone realized what had happened. But there was one problem they didn't know about. The private company they planned to transfer the assets to was already under my control. I had purchased it anonymously 2 years earlier. I waited. The next Friday, Claire told me she was going to stay with a friend for the weekend. I knew she was actually meeting Adrian. I followed them to a private office building, but I didn't enter. Instead, I waited until they were inside, then sent one message to my lawyer. Started. 5 minutes later, every account involved in the scheme was frozen. Adrian's phone stopped receiving messages. The financial officer's access to the company systems disappeared. And Claire received an alert that her attempted transaction had failed. She immediately called me. I answered. She asked whether I knew what was happening. I told her yes. There was silence. Then she asked, "How much do you know?" I said enough. She started crying and told me that she had made a mistake, but I asked her one question. Why? She didn't answer at first. Then she admitted that Adrian had told her I was planning to leave her without anything. He had convinced her that I had millions hidden from her, and that if she helped him expose my finances, he would marry her and give her the life she wanted. But then she admitted something that made me realize how deeply she had betrayed me. She said Adrian had shown her evidence that I was secretly worth billions. She knew. She had known for months. She hadn't stayed with me because she loved me. She had stayed because she was waiting for the right opportunity to take some of the money before leaving. I asked her how much she thought I was worth. She said about 20 million. I almost laughed. She had no idea. The amount Adrian had shown her was a tiny fraction of what I actually owned. Then I told her the truth. I told her Adrian worked for me. She went silent. I told her Vantage Systems belonged to me. Another silence. Then I told her that the investment company Adrian had been trying to steal from was mine too. She whispered, "Who are you?" I told her my full name and the name of my holding company. She immediately searched it. I could hear her breathing change. For years, financial publications had listed my company as one of the largest privately controlled investment groups in the country. But because I rarely appeared publicly, most people didn't know what I looked like. Claire had been living with the man whose name was behind that company without realizing it. Then she said something I will never forget. "Why didn't you tell me?" I told her, because I wanted to know what you would do when you thought I had nothing. She started crying and said she had loved me. I told her that love doesn't require forged documents. It doesn't require secret meetings. And it certainly doesn't require stealing from someone before leaving them. Then I ended the call. But the story didn't end there. The following Monday, Adrian arrived at the company's headquarters expecting to meet the investors who were supposed to help him take control of the assets. Instead, he walked into a conference room filled with lawyers. I was sitting at the head of the table. He looked at me for several seconds before recognizing who I was. Then he realized that the entire operation had been recorded. Every meeting, every message, every conversation about the forged documents. He tried to explain that Claire had manipulated him. Claire later claimed Adrian had manipulated her. The financial officer blamed both of them. None of it mattered. The evidence was already there. Adrian was removed from the company. The financial officer was arrested for financial fraud. And Claire disappeared from my life almost immediately. But 6 months later, I received a letter from her. She said she had spent months thinking about what she had done and finally understood why I had never told her about my wealth. She said she had spent 3 years measuring our relationship by what she believed I could provide, and the moment she thought someone else could provide more, she chose them. I never responded, not because I wanted revenge, because there was nothing left to say. The strangest part of the entire story is that Claire thought she was betraying an ordinary man for a wealthy one. She didn't know she was leaving a billionaire for another man who was secretly working for him. She thought Adrian was taking her into a richer life. Instead, he led her directly into a room where every secret she had kept was already waiting for her. And the final lesson I learned wasn't about money. It was about what people reveal when they think you have nothing to offer them. Because sometimes the most dangerous secret in a relationship isn't that your partner is hiding something from you. It's discovering that they have been waiting for you to become valuable enough to betray.